Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Up here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program, covering importance of church on your Tuesday morning rise and shine. Importance of church this morning here as we look at our topic: Black America losing its soul at church. Black America losing its soul at church. So welcome to our live talk program as we cover importance of church. Hopefully you had a blessed weekend and you're ready to take on this work week. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your love towards us and the blessings, dear Lord, of your word and the deliverance that you wrought in our lives. May you bless us, dear Father, as we walk humbly before thee. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So our topic for this morning here, as we look at church, or the importance of it, is Black America losing its soul at church. And this is taken from a statement from a pastor that did a Aretha Franklin eulogy over there, wherever. And so this is what we're looking at here this morning. I'm going to read that article about his response to a backlash of some statements he made at the funeral. And I want to look at this topic here, but his statement goes all the way up until the at, and he says, they're losing their souls, but I'm going to put it here, losing their soul at church, which is my spin on it. So this is what we're looking at here this morning again, and I start off by reading Revelation 17 verse 4 and 5. Revelation 17 verse 4 and 5, and it says here, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of the abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and the abomination of the earth." And so here is described a state of the church, that when the church is in this state, that it is corrupting, it has a very terrible corrupting influence, and it makes the earth abominable. All the abominations of the earth, instead of coming from paganism, is coming from the church. And this is what the problem is. Often we look at the institution that is supposed to be benefiting the society, instead is corrupting the society, and this should not be. And so the question, the statement is from the gentleman here, which I'll read in a second, is that the church itself is supposed to be the solution to the problem for what ails Black America or African American communities. And I'm going to read at the end of the article, I'm going to read this one statement that made me come to this topic so I can bring you along in my thinking. At the end of the article, the pastor said, "The church is the only viable institution we have in the African American community." So the church is the only viable institution, he states. So normally in a community, the more viable institutions is the healthier the community is. And what he's saying here, without trying to prove him wrong or right, we're just going to take a statement of his value. At least from his point of view, he sees the church as the only viable institution, the only, I guess, working, functioning institution. And yet my premise for this morning here is that Black America is losing its soul at church. The only viable institution that is in the Black American community is actually the institution where they're losing their souls. So more on that. I'm going to read for you before I go into the article and then take it apart piece by piece. It's in Luke chapter 10, verse 32 through 36. Luke chapter 10, verse 32 through 36. And here Christ telling the story of the Good Samaritan is what it's normally called, so you know where I'm reading. And it says, "Likewise a Levi, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side." So this is a story of a Jew who fell, assuming it's a Jew, who fell among thieves, beaten up. And the Levi, the person that's supposed to be the main individual who was a concern for the well-being of the Jewish people, who would be similar in our modern time, the patriotic American, the one who love America more than anybody else. This Levi in his time would represent that person. He's the one that, without question, he is the Jew, and he dictates who are Jews and who are not Jews. If you follow my straightforward talk here, straightforward. If you can't get that, I don't know. So when you look at this, if you think about it, if anybody should be concerned for a Jew that fell among thieves, should be the Levi, because he, as I say, is the true Jew. He decides who are Jewish and who are not. And so here they fell amongst thieves. And I'm reading this because it's important to know that if we say Black America losing its soul at church, you would think the place that a Black American should not go to and lose his soul, should be protected the most, is when he falls among, or is among, or even if he falls among thieves, the church is supposed to be there for him, because that's what the pastors are there for. But here, in the Jewish situation, the Levi saw him, and he passed by on the other side. He didn't care for his suffering. He was looking out for his best interest. And 33 said, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. This is what really is missing, compassion. And verse 34, and went to him, and bound up his wound, pouring oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. What's the difference between the Levi and the Samaritan? The Samaritan had basically no dog in the fight, but the Samaritan had compassion. The Levi didn't, and that changed everything. Who has compassion? Who's seen people suffering and have compassion on the suffering? So the Samaritan bound him up and took care of him. Verse 35, and on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And so, was it the priest, was it Levi, or was it the Samaritan? Most actually, this would be difficult, because this would be in our modern day speak. If a person fell among thieves, and the person is part of a hated group, and the person was part of the prominent group, I should say, would you expect somebody from the hated group to help? The reality of that is that that's how life is anyhow. So when you look at this and we say Black America is losing its soul at church, that's what I'm saying. We're going to get into this article. I'm going to look at some of what the pastor said at the funeral of, what's her name, Aretha Franklin. And I might note there that I didn't watch the whole presentation. I'm just taking the article. I'm not going beyond the article because I didn't watch his presentation, nor did I watch the funeral. So I'm not really familiar with what went on, but I saw some of the pictures of the funeral. So I kind of get an idea of who was there, the Oahu in America and in Black America. So now I'm going to go to the article. It's written by Leonardo Blair, and it's taken from Christian Post, and it's entitled, Pastor Who Said Black America Losing Its Soul at Aretha Franklin's Funeral, Standby Comments. Right? So when I first saw this article, I misread the title, and I didn't read it at first. I just saw it, and then probably like hours later I came back and I saw it again. I said, oh, let me read it. Because when I saw the article, I thought it was saying that the Black America is losing its soul literally at the funeral. So like I thought he was saying that they went to the funeral. I thought he was not the funeral, and he was just saying what went down at the funeral is a testimony that Black America is losing its soul. And the reason why I thought that was because of the pictures I saw. And every time a picture would come up on the headlines, I would see it and I was like, it is a party. It's not a funeral. And I could imagine the level of carnality that was being displayed at the funeral of a person that died. Most actually, I know who it is, and that is, she was a daughter of a reverend, and she had left the church for the money to do entertainment and became very famous, using the skills and talents that she developed in the church. So I understand the context, but it's just I saw the headline and I thought the pastor was criticizing the funeral and saying that the Black America is losing their soul at the funeral. So that was my original thought. So that's why I went along with this topic. So enough of that. I'll go straight into the meat of the matter. At 10 minutes in, 11 minutes in. So here it says, Pastor Salem Bible Church in Atlanta, Jasper William Jr., is standing by his recent comments criticizing Black America for losing its soul at music icon Aretha Franklin's funeral. I was trying to show that the movement now is moving and should move in a different direction. William told the Associated Press after he was accused of being homophobic, sexist, and demeaning to other Black people. What we need to do is create respect among ourselves. Aretha is the person with that song, Respect, that is laid out for us and what we need to be as a race within ourselves. We need to show each other that. We need to show each other respect. That was the reason why I did it, he said of his message. In his controversial eulogy, Friday, William slammed black on black crime, Black Lives Matter, and argued that single mothers are incapable of raising sons well by themselves. It amazes me, quote, how it is that when the police kill one of us, we are ready to protest, march, destroy innocent property. We are ready to loot, steal whatever we want. But when we kill 100 of us, nobody says anything. Nobody does anything. He continues, if you choose to ask me today, do Black Lives Matter? Let me answer like this. No, Black lives do not matter. Black lives will not matter. Black lives should not matter. Black life must not matter. Until Black people start respecting Black lives and stop killing ourselves, Black lives can never matter. Williams, who also argued against the prevalence of single mother in Black community, said that it is, quote, now time for Black America to come back home, end of quote, to their value which have strong Christian roots. Quote, anytime we stray away from God's design for what the home is supposed to be, heavy will be our results. God has told us what to do with our home. He designed a home. I mean, God put in a home a man and a woman, a father and a mother. God put in the home a husband and a wife, a provider and a nurturer. End of quote. According to the Associated Press, some critics of William critique on single mother thought he was taking a dig at Franklin, Aretha Franklin that is, who was a single mother of 4 boys. He argued, however, that his words about Black women being incapable of raising sons was well alone when taken out of context. Raising sons well alone was taken out of context is the root of what I've been talking about. Here's the root of what I've been talking about. In order to change America, we must change Black American culture, he said. We must do it through parenting. In order for the parenting to go forth, it has to be done in the home. And then he says the home. Media commentator and professor of media studies and urban education at Temple University, Mark Lamont Hill, was among the pastor's many critics who dismissed his message of right-wing talking points. It would have been amazing if Pastor Jasper Williams had sent on Aretha Franklin instead of her father and right-wing talking points Hale noted on Twitter. William insists, however, that much of the flack he is receiving is due to people not understanding what he is talking about. I'm sure much of the negativity is due to the fact that they don't understand what I'm talking about, he told Associated Press. Anybody who thinks Black America is all right, as well as all right as we are now, is crazy. We are not all right. It's a lot of change that needs to occur. This change must come from within us. Nobody can give us things to eliminate where we are. We have to change from within ourselves. It is ludicrous for the church not to be involved. The church is the only viable institution we have in the African American community. We must step up and turn our race around. In the article. So that's that article here, just dealing with a sliver. As I read, his comments were, his eulogy was 50 minutes. The family came out later on and said that they really don't know him. I guess they just invited him because, I guess 30 something years ago he did the eulogy for one of the Franklin family who was a civil rights leader. And so he was just more invited, not because they knew him, and the mother didn't invite him because she didn't plan her death, I guess, or plan her funeral. So that's how he got there. And he got there and delivered his 50 minutes. He spoke for 50 minutes. Even they say while he was speaking, and he said Black Lives Don't Matter, Stevie Wonder uttered Black Lives Matter. Which all lives matter, as they say, including Black lives. Understand the context, though, I would understand why Stevie Wonder would say that. So, as he said, if a police kill one black person, there is violence and protest. But if blacks kill black, there's silence. I'll start there, as I want to go through some points here about what he's saying, and I start back with this point here. I do believe that the reason why if blacks kill 100 blacks, there is silence because on the quiet, blacks are afraid of the hooligans and the thugs and the evildoers in the black community. That's what I think. And there's a level of glorification, and it's like if you want to survive in a community, you have to give props or you have to give respect to the evildoers in the community. And I think that type of relationship is what's creating the problem. I'm sure there's other answers to the problem, but just knowing any type of dealings I've had when I was younger, especially, that there is kind of a look the other way to the evildoers in the community. The problem is many of the evildoers in the community used to go to the pastor's church. And if you ever think about any church that you've belonged to that are like black churches or even white church, any church, they tend to like bring in a youth pastor to cajole and to play with and to tickle the fancy of the young people who are rebelling. And they like beg them and plead with them, and then push lollipop in their mouths to try to kind of like befriend them into being nice to them. So I would say that I think is part of the problem. This is why I say my topic is Black America is losing its soul at church. Because I think even I would start always at the youth pastor level. I always see youth pastor as the worst pastor in the church because his responsibility is to babysit kids and to make them his friends and to make them think he's cool. Almost all the youth pastors are cool, because that's the only way to reach young people. You have to be cool. Like imagine Christ was 30 when he started his public ministry, and he had John, who was considered probably the youngest in his ministry. And so we understand John was a real young man, a teenager, probably late teens. And yet you don't read Christ's statement that Christ was any type of youth pastor, because he himself was technically a youth. He was a young man. And you never pick up that semblance that Christ was a youth pastor, and he was giddy and unstable. And I think that's why I believe that not just in the black church, because this statement goes for the white church also. I just church in America, the way they do youth ministry is unreal. It's like a bunch of kindergarteners being babysitted by kids in elementary school or something. And I think that's part of the problem. And so you come in the black community now, the black heroes are basketball players, thugs, entertainers, singers and actors. It's the not the academic or the academia that is the hero in the black community. Is the entertainers. And then you think about it, some of the biggest heroes are rappers. These are mostly people glorify murder, drugs, and demeaning of young women and stuff like that. So when you have that, and there's not like the next thing you talk about is the black mothers in the inability to grow up young men, which is true, because if you think about it, most of these black young men that's coming out of these black single mother homes, the way they talk about women is so demeaning. And it is true, because when you deal with some of these young girls in those black communities that have kids, it's quite repulsive to deal with. And you can see where the problem would lie, because if you have a young man coming up with a woman, and that's a mother, that the lifestyle she's living and the way she behave, I remember I was dealing with a female one time, and all of a sudden it clicked in my mind, like bam, I could see why a young black guy would turn out to be gay. Because if he has to deal with that as a mother, he would end up hating female, because the character is so annoying and trying to be controlling, and that I could just see somebody say, if that's what a female is, I'll never want to deal with a female. This is horrible. So I could see that idea that is incapable of bringing up a young black man. And I want to say this for context. The gay black capital of America is Atlanta, from my understanding. High concentration of single parents, single mothers, and high concentration of gay black men. And this pastor here, if I read the article in the beginning, this Jasper person, he's from Atlanta. So he has to be dealing with a lot of this. So I can see why people says his eulogy was homophobic. Because as I say, you look at it, I've seen both black men and white men. You look at interview, if you meet any homosexual guys that are black or white, ask them, just don't tell them why, just ask them, was your mother domineering and controlling? And most of them, not all of them, most of them going to tell you yes. You're going to be surprised. The amount of them will tell you, yeah, my mom was very domineering and controlling. And somehow there's something that crosswire went messed up in their head, and they start to be like, man, I don't want to deal with female. This is rough, because these domineering, over the top, overly woman, the womanly or feminine, black women, rough to deal with. I don't see how it's going to be. So this is why I say anything he's saying, I could see why they would take a problem with this. But this is why I say the black America is losing its church, its soul at church, literally, because this is black church for you. Think about a black female, the ideal or the image of a black female in a church, and you see if she don't fit all that bill, over the top, filled with wig, makeup, all kind of stuff, just loud, getting in the spirit. That's the worst type of female to deal with. It's just too much. It's just too much. So anyhow, go back to some of this. So William told the Associated Press, I just want to take some pieces here. William told the Associated Press, after he was accused of being homophobic, sexist, and demeaning to other black people, right? So he just wanted to point it out here. So he was viewed as homophobic. But the problem is, and you probably heard it here from me first and only, that I'm one of the only probably person I know that say part of the problem is not the young men were born this way. I believe part of the problem there is a type of female they be mothered by single. And as I say, many of these female there is the extreme femininity. There's an extreme masculinity. They call it toxic masculinity, where the guy is just boorish, rough, he go extreme male. He has to do only male stuff and talk male, act male, and he's just boorish and rude and rough and brutish. That's the extreme masculinity, right? And then you have the extreme femininity. It's just it's just that this vapid, over the top female that is just take femininity to an extreme that is so far that the extreme in the femininity, it makes it that a male can't really relate to it. All right. It's you normally see, like, I give you an example. When a male becomes a homosexual, notice they're not a normal female. They're like a drag queen female. It's just they try to mirror that over the top femininity. And most women, I think, don't fit that over the top femininity, or some women don't. But many women, they go, it's like an extreme femininity that it's so far from a male that it's hard to compact the two of them together. They can't be compatible. I know I need to do a whole presentation on that. I know somebody could take issues with what I just say, but if you have your antennas up, you know what I'm talking about. There's this brutish male masculinity and this extreme soft, like she can't walk barefooted. It's like a female that will go to the beach, have a high heel shoes and a bathing suit on, and walking on the beach in a high heel shoes with makeup on, her hair done, and our hands, waving in the air like she crazy. And that's the second extreme. Is like it take femininity to a. It's like it's almost like a disability almost. It's like weird. It's like the person has a mental illness. They're weirdos. And then the masculinity goes the opposite direction, just brutish and just filled with testosterone and over the top. And now you put those two people together and they're just warring because they can't blend, because they can't have a balance. Like that person, like she can't take out garbage or something because her nail are like 2 inches long and whatever. And so when a guy now turn homosexual, you notice most of those drag queen guys, they try to mimic that extreme femininity. And that type of extreme femininity can't raise kids. I'm sorry. Same thing with the normal brutish guy. A brutish guy can't be a husband in the home because he can't really hang with his kids and his wife and be around them because he's too masculine. Now I'm gonna tell you, in the black community, you see this reality, and you see it's profound in the black community. I can tell you, and you can do this, and I've done this. Go to black churches, and you could go to a black church and you can't tell who are wife and husband. Just in case somebody's saying what you're saying. Remember, my topic is Black America losing its soul at church. You go to the black church and you'll be profoundly shocked that you cannot tell who are wives and husband, because the black guys, they're black guy, they come up thuggish, and then the black woman, she come up and she want to have wigs and makeup and all kind of crazy stuff, and she like a drag queen herself, and the two they're not compatible, and there's no black home, no black families. You hardly see black guys with their family. It's hard to tell who's black family unit. And then most of the black women, the highest percentage of them are single mothers. They're not gonna maintain a home. The black guy's not gonna be with them, and the black woman not gonna be with them. And that's just reality. The brutishness and the extreme femininity, they don't make families because they're too far apart. It's hard for them to hang with each other. So I put that there. If you have any opinion or comments, shoot me over. I'd like to hear. Also, you find they say it was sexist because he was saying that you need to have a wife or a woman to be a nurturer. Notice that there, God put in a home a husband and a wife, a provider and a nurturer. So it must be that statement that they don't like, because I was cutting a piece of his quote. They don't like that idea that a male should be a provider. Now, here's a problem again in the black community. That part of the function is not there. And imagine now, he has critics who are criticizing a statement like that. which a statement like that should not be a problem. Should not be a problem. You need that. So much of the black young men are deadbeats. And so you need that to be promoted. And that if that's a problem in the black church, then that's why I would say black America is losing its soul literally at church. They're supposed to be having their soul saved at church. They're losing it. The church, I seem to for years just haven't, they're not fighting back. You think the pastor should be the one fighting back and saying, no, brothers, we gotta be more, less brutish and be more domesticated. It's not just the woman need to be at home, the guy need to be at home. And the guy need to be more domesticated and need to be off that brutish, thuggish mentality and get off the street, come back home and learn to soften himself up, be more feminine, so to speak, be more nurturing. And he needs to be able to hang with his wife and his kids. The flip of that is that the female need to be more masculine. I need to be less feminine, scream less, take off all that paint off their nails and paint off their face, and start wearing natural hair, and start. As I said, that image to me is just a crazy image of female on the beach with a high heel shoes. Get off that extreme femininity and start learn to be more practical, and less irrational. And I guarantee those two moves will bring back the home together. And it doesn't matter if it's a white or Hispanic or whatever. But that idea that I can't hang with my boys, but I can't hang with my family, need to be killed in the black community. But somehow these pastors with these mega churches seem to have not a problem with this. I guess this one has. But you hear no voices saying, man, we've gone to our corners as male and female. And that will not make a good home. So they say it's sexist. I don't think that's sexist. Sexist in the sense of the sexes need to balance out. But the sexes are real. And as I say, I can show you all day long. I've known female who is just hyper feminine, aggressive, over the top, loud, and a lot of their sons turn homosexuals. It's just weird to watch because it's repulsive, sexist, and demeaning to other black people. Well, truth is demeaning. That's just part of the reality. Truth is demeaning. At times when you're being the target, you're being reproved. Here he says he picks off from the article. Right in the article, I'm pulling this other part here. He picks off this idea from a famous song by Aretha Franklin that talks about respect. I remember I used to hear this song when I was younger a lot. And he talks about respect. And he said we need to show each other respect. It is true, because I think the place that's supposed to happen, especially is in the black church. This idea of respect, we need to show each other respect. If you're not showing yourself respect, it's going to be hard for you to expect others to show you respect or to legislate. And I think one of the problem in the black community is that there's a point, either while Martin Luther King Jr. was doing his thing and doing a good job of trying to call for civil rights, that the church seemed to, I guess, and the society seemed to accept this and then didn't do anything else. The black community I'm talking. And that if a person don't like you and a person think you're inferior and person going to treat you as you're inferior, you could require your civil rights, but it still require for you to prove them wrong or for you to live out your life. You're not even proving anybody wrong, just simply living out your life. Do your thing. And I think that should have really started in the black community, in the churches primarily, because as he stated, I'm going with what he said, the institution that the blacks have is the church. And so within the church, there need to be a certain level of decorum, a certain level of behavior being displayed and encouraged. And that starts with respect. There's a certain level of respectability that you should do. And normally, as I say, if you think about it, if the person is doing Jim Crow and they're doing crack infiltration and doing all this thing to destroy you, You shouldn't be working to destroy yourself. You should be working to protect yourself. You should be working to police yourself. If you don't trust the police, then you police yourself. You know, and that's what I think is that level of respect is not is you're asking for it. You know, respect me, and I think this was significant because I saw at the funeral Reverend Jesse Jackson and one or two other people that are prominent in the black community, or I think have really been bad leaders for the community after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. Because they did not, they kept on, and I think it was more extortion that Jesse Jackson did, is that they kept on pushing for payments and pushing for civil rights, but they never push for me to take care of myself. Like I have to do what I have to do. It's nothing wrong to say wrong was done, let's right the wrong, but I have to be able to do what I have to do. One of the things I learned earlier on in America was that the institution that was built was not built for me. The institution was built for who built it. And so I had to go build my own institution and go build my own church because it was very clear. And I remember the first time I heard this, I was surprised because, you know, I thought I joined the Adventist church, the worldwide church. And then all of a sudden I realized the whites would be like, well, no, this church is our church. We built this. Literally, that was what was told me. We built this. So I was, oh, I'm sorry. You see, I thought it was just a membership organization. You become a member, you could become leader. No, we built this. This is ours. And we need to be leaders in our institution. You see, they viewed it as theirs. It belonged to them. And this was literally what was told me by whites. So I realized is that you can't, and as I said, that was in my innocence because not understanding how America works. So then you realize I have to build my own. And when you build your own, then you don't have to run into that type of problem. So if the leader here now says, this is the only institution we have is the church, then the church was to run and operate a certain way and infuse that type of mentality into the community. And so I learned really quickly, oh, you need to have your own. And then you don't have to go, like again, I have my own radio, so I don't have to go beg airtime with somebody else's. And then somebody go tell me, oh, this is my own, you can't come. No, I will play, just about anybody that's preaching sensible and will allow me to play their material on here. But not necessarily that they would allow me. And I'm going to say not necessarily. The same other ministries that I play, they wouldn't allow me on theirs. But I'm not, because I think in the right way. I'm thinking, this is ours. But others will be like, oh no, you go build your own. So I learned. So this is important. In order for you to get the respect, in other words, you got to take your own. Especially when you deal in a situation where, because think about it, they said that what he was saying was right-wing talking points. To a certain degree, yes, and to a certain degree, no. The yes part is, the people who are against Black Lives Matter, they want to hear things negatively spoken about Black America without context. As if America doesn't have a history of oppression of Black people. This is what they want to hear. So to a certain degree, yes, they like that type of stuff. They want a pastor, a Black pastor. He will become their hero to say negative things or to say that Black people are this or Black people are that. But the reality is still there. But the no part is that it's not necessarily right-wing talking point because the reality still remains the same. There is a problem with this single parent thing. There's a problem where young men that come up in the Black community or come up to be sport athletes and entertainers and thugs. And then very few go the academic route, and the heroes in the Black community are not the people who follow academics, but the people follow a different worthless type of lifestyle. This has to be encouraged against or preached against in the church, irrespective of what the conservative right-wing people say. It's a painful thing to do, but you have to do it. You still have to say, well, they're probably going to grab my words and use it against the black community to excuse their destruction and their moves to destroy the black community. But I still have to make mention of these things, though painful though it may be. If I say to you that black women spend too much money on wigs and support Korean businesses, yeah, a right wing person will snatch on that and use it to demean black women. But at the end of the day, probably just it still needs to be said, because probably what you need to do is invest in more hair care, natural hair care products and stuff like that, and work on your black image and your black beauty. But yes, they'll grab it and they'll say, well, they said these negative things, so we're going to use that against them to excuse our destruction and trying to dismantle black institutions. So we need to show each other respect. I believe that's so. You can't ask people to deal with you in a civil way and give you civil rights if you're not dealing with each other in a civil way. So this, I think, he's right, in spite of what people might use it. Also, there in the statement, he says, in his controversial eulogy on Friday, William slammed black and black crime, Black Lives Matter, and argued that single mothers are incapable of raising son well by themselves. So we kind of covered it already. Black and black crime is a problem. In other words, there's a lot of the black leaders that you will see talking and running their mouths, but they're afraid of many black communities. They don't live in them. They stay far from them because they're out of control. There are many black leaders black leaders of local churches that don't live in those black communities that they're leading out in the churches in, because again of the violence and the lifestyle that goes on there. But they won't say anything because they want to be in. You my boy, me down with you. We good. But we're not really good because I don't live in your neighborhood. I'm afraid of being here. I'm come here and I leave at a certain point, but I want to maintain good relationships with you because I want you to protect me, and to say I'm cool just in case somebody want to carjack me. So this is where the problem is. So yes, I still believe that if you have, like recently I covered last week where this cop shot this white cop shot this kid in the car and got a guilty verdict and 15 years in prison. I believe that still need to be protested. But at the end of the day, the black and black violence need to be protested also. And there need not be no silence about this, because it has made many black communities unsafe. Also, William, who also argue against the prevalence of single mother in black community, this is a major problem. As I say, I believe that problem is not just an issue where black guys just want to marry white women. If you talk to many blacks, they'll just say, oh, these black guys want to marry white women or other women from other race. I believe that some of the thing is the difficulty of dealing. That's part of the problem. I don't think that's not a part of the problem. I think part of that problem is, again, immorality. One of the number one thing that America export is pornography. And I believe most black guys coming up, they probably watch pornography with white women, and that's what they want. That's probably a part of the problem. But I believe another part of the problem is that it says many of this idea of the image of a black woman, I think, is perverted. There is something wrong with it. Just like how the idea of a black guy that doesn't hang with his family is a problem. Another part of the problem is, what is an image of a black woman? It's not something that is very appetizing. It is something that's hard to live with and deal with. Even in a church situation, some of the biggest outlandish behavior is normal. It's viewed as, to me, the idea of a black woman is waiting to exhale. So that has to be something. I'm sure what I'm saying is discussion worthy. God puts in the home a husband and a wife, he says, a provider and a nurturer. I can't disagree with that. They say that is sexist. Also, he says, according to Associated Press, some of the critics of William critique on single mother thought he was taking a dig at Franklin, who was a single mother of 4 boys. He argued, however, that his words about black women being incapable of raising sons well alone were taken out of context. So it says they were incapable. It's a very powerful word because I know I've had this statement, I've made statement like this before, and a person said, well, I was raised with a single mother. And I think some of that has to do, over the years I've noticed, is with the temperament of a single mother, because I know there are people who have the same temperament and they're married, and their husband is afraid of them. And they're not just black; they could be a white woman or a Hispanic woman or an Asian woman. The characteristic is scary because the person fly off the handle. They get mad easily. It's just you. The moment you're 18 or 16, you just run out of the house. You just don't want to be around something like that. And I think the temperament is part of the problem. And so it doesn't matter what race of person, when you have a female with that extreme femininity, always screaming, always worried, always, just hard to be around, and then trying to raise a boy, probably a child, yeah. But when that behavior become like the child become 14, 15, it's a boy, man, it's rough. Now I've said it, some females said, Lord, it was rough being a female in a home with a woman that is so screamy and crazy. It's rough on both male and female. You want to run away, you want to just disappear, you just go mental, because she just constantly screaming, constantly worried, constantly, everything just go off the cuff. I guess I can't explain it enough how crazy that temperament is in a female. And someday you look at black female, they're supposed to be like that. They're supposed to get loud and crazy and over the top, and that's normal. I think that's a big part of the problem. And another biggest part of the problem, I think, is the male. Black male, just like, forget about it. They don't deal with family. According to the AP, some critics of media commentator and professor of media studies in Temple University's enlargement, critics say he was among the pastor's critic that dismissed the message of right-wing talking points, and the churches, and so I do say yes, as I said earlier. I almost wrapping up here. I'm going to get to some text. So yes, it is true. It is right-wing talking points. As I say, people who, if you go online, I've observed long enough that the same people who like to demean black people are the people who love this. If you go on the article, there's an article in USA Today, and if you want to see something, go to the comment section, and you could almost see all the people that are happy for the pastor to say these things. They are some of the most rabidly hateful people of black people. It's like they're sick. They get up every day and they just talk negative against black people. You just go to the comment section. The people who are happy for it, I almost could guarantee you, mark their names and go to other articles that have anything to do with blacks, and you'll find the same group of people coming out saying negative things against blacks. So yeah, I could see the problem. And this is where I think, like, even me as an individual, I try to just get over it. I just know that if you talk certain negative thing, if a person is rabidly racist, and you talk any negative thing because you have to reprove, people who don't like black will latch onto it and say, yeah, these are arguments against blacks. But at the end of the day, something you have to deal with the reality. It's just like if somebody come to me and says to me something, saying not have anything to do with this topic, but just something to me about probably the way I preach or something I say or whatever, I have to just take it because I want to do better. And it might not be complimentary, might not compliment me, but I have to take it, especially if I know the person's mean well. They're not trying to just tear me down. I have to take it because that's just reality. So I say that part of the problem here is that critiquing any society, and you can do this about any society. If you listen to me long enough, you'll see me critiquing white society, critiquing black. It doesn't matter. You gotta deal with the reality. Because the reality is destructive to the community. It's important to note, especially talking about these right-wing talking points. If a group of people have done everything to you, they have enslaved you, they have Jim Crow law you, they have undermine all civil rights that they gave you. They have bringing the drugs by the container load to flood your community and create all these drug epidemics in your community. There's a certain point where you have to realize that you can't ask them for help anymore, and you can't ignore problems in your community because they might feel that it justifies their behavior against you. You just have to go ahead and take care of yourself. And sometimes taking care of yourself, as you know, is you have to pick that scab and you have to put some ointment in that wound that might burn, but you're going to fix your problem in spite of your enemies looking at you and thinking, I'm going to destroy you. You know, I remember when I decided to do independent and do some of these things I'm doing now, there were people who would tell me that this is our institution. They would turn around and say, basically, I'm going to fail. But there were things that I didn't know how to do that would have made me fail. But it didn't mean I said I'm going to ignore those things that would have made me fail. Honestly, would have made me fail because somebody was there waiting for me to fail. I had to realize, you know what happened? I have some weak spots, I have some blind spots, and I have some things that I'm going to have to learn, and there's something I'm going to have to unlearn. But it doesn't matter. Because again, in order for me to succeed, I have to deal with all of them. I can't just deal with the positive, and I can't say, well, they're against me. That's why if you listen to me, you know, probably on Tuesdays I'll talk about some of these things. But most of the time I'd forget about what happened in the church. If you listen to me preaching about covenant, Advent, I don't talk about the church. I try to ignore the church because I have my problems to deal with. And you say, well, what has this to do with this, with the right wing talking points? That there's a point where you have to ignore people who hate you, and just go ahead and deal with your weaknesses and strengthen those, and deal with your failings and get rid of those, because you need to succeed. Because not only you for your own self, but for the fact that there's others who want you to fail, and I'm sure those people, it burned them, because not only am I still here, but I'm still growing. Because why? Because I'm never ignore my failings. I didn't say, well, I don't want to talk about or deal with my feelings, because, we all have weaknesses that needs to be overcome, and we can't ignore them, in other words. So I think it's the same thing for the Black community. You can't ignore the fact that there's a crisis when it comes on the single parent home. You can't ignore there's a crisis when it comes onto the violence. There's a crisis that is in the society where there's no institutions except the church. And in the church, many people are coming to church to lose their soul because the institutions in the church are weak and a lot of time immoral and demoralized. And they only focus on what the black people, the whites have done to them. They're not focused on what they need to do for themselves. So that's why I'm like, there's a point where I'm like, sometimes if I don't hear somebody tell me something or something like that, I don't even know what's going on in the broader Seventh Adventist church. I don't really think about it. Because I have my own problems to deal with. I have my own struggles to overcome. I have my own institutions to build. They have theirs. They have sitting at $2.something billion. They have all the money in the world and all the people in the world, literally all over the world. I have nothing harder to work with, so I have to do my best with what I have. And that's how I think it is. You can't worry about what right-wing people are saying or doing. You have to worry about what they're doing in the sense of you have to worry about them coming in with their garbage so you can club them in the head. But then you have to take your own. So you have to know to hit them and hit them hard. They try to hit you like with a fist, and you take a 5-pound piece of iron and club them in the head. And then you move on, but you have to deal with your own mess and try to build up your people. And that's why I see, like in my church, number one, I build families. I build up the institution of the church. I build up my ability to be a leader, because leaders are important. Study, as the Bible said, to show yourself approved. Watch for people who are working to destroy your church and destroy your institution. And all that other stuff. You have to do offensive and defensive. And you do that, you can build businesses, build institution. As I say, I'm building up again. Start to put more time into the radio, and I'm gonna build other institution as I go along. But that's how I see it. So he says the church is the only viable institution we have in African American community. We must step up and turn our race around. I think it's the similar idea. You know, it's I just see this as is it's good medicine. Because that's just what it is. You if what you have, you work with what you have, and build what you have. And at one point, I realized I didn't have because, you know, this was not mine, and it was very clear to me. People said it. This is not yours. So I'm like, okay, so it's not mine. I get out of here then. I put no work into somebody else's stuff. Notice here, Proverbs 14:32, Proverbs 14:34. It says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter if you deal with, as I say, Asian, African, white, Hispanic, whatever. Sin is always a reproach to any people. And so it doesn't matter if right-wing people like to point out your sin. We all have sinned and come short of the glory, and people like to use your sin against you to kind of excuse their bad behavior. Well, at the end of the day, we got to deal with our sin and fix our problems, and can't excuse our problem. And as you know, the Bible is very clear. You know, when you look at what has happened, the black Americans really didn't receive a love. You know, America always says it's a Christian nation, but throughout all this Christianity, and this was done primarily by the church, we had slavery, we had Jim Crow law, we had the crack epidemic, we have all these things. You know, the thieves was actually America. If you look at the black Americans who fell amongst thieves, who was the thieves? That was America. And so if you fell among thieves and the thief had been whipping you and beating you, there's a certain point where you have to say, you know what happened? I know I'm going to do with the thief next time. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to have to protect yourself. You got to know that the thief is coming. And he's coming to beat you up, and he always come with a new ploy. But you can't say, well, I'm not going to say this or I'm going to do this because it's going to make the thief feel good. No, you're going to have to admit the fact, hey, the thief had beat me up. I'm okay with that. But to keep being beaten by the thief, and every time you go down the way, you get beaten by the thief, then you're foolish. What you need to do is next time you go down the road, if you're that person that get fall among thieves, what you do, you have somebody walking in the bushes or on the side of the hill, in the shadows. And the moment the thieves come to rob you, the person will start pow, 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 and get the thief. You know what I'm saying? You plan ahead. You don't know the thief always get you, and you just act as if da 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 da, and then keep going on the road and keep falling amongst thieves. Imagine if this happened to the guys a second time. You say, man, why are you so stupid? Why you keep going on that road? Or you avoid that road. You know, or thieves are on that road. And probably, you know, you do a campaign where you go get some placards and plant placards along the side and say, don't go around this road, there's thieves around the road. Or you get the government to come in and get the thieves. But you do what you have to do because you fell among thieves one time. And I think that's where black Americans have made a mistake. They fell among thieves. And I think, sad to say, now they're in churches, and I think the church is the only institution, and I think a whole bunch of thieves, a multi-millionaire megachurch pastor thieves, are clobbering them again. So they jump out of frying pan into a fire. And I think that's what happened. You go to the churches, it's a bunch of partying, it's a bunch of sing-along and more sing. That's why Aretha Franklin is so celebrated, because that's black American mindset. It's just sing, sing, sing. So black America losing its soul at church. The pastors just preach stupid sermons. When was the last time you hear anything sensible to a black pastor? Nothing. Ain't nothing sensible. It's just a bunch of just nothingness. You even go to the ones in the church, I call them present truth. It's a bunch of doctrines and prophecy. You'd never live your lifestyle up better. You only have hope for heaven. You'll never get a blessing on this earth. Because most of these pastors, it's just nothing. It's just every day get up, they talk about the Pope, and they talk about the Antichrist, which is the same thing, I guess. They talk about, I don't even know, nothing. It's a bunch of nothing. Because to me, I always say, if you study the Pope every day and hear sermons about the Pope, you probably end up after 10, 15 years, you have a PhD in darkness. But you didn't learn how to live righteous. You didn't really study the character of Christ. You didn't study how to be successful. we will study some of that, but most of what we study is how to be successful, how to build ourselves, our families, and our institution. Let's pray. We thank you, O God, again for your love. We thank you for your righteousness. We thank you for your deliverance from evil. I pray, O Lord, that you may continue to deliver us and continue to teach us, dear Lord, how to build, how to grow, how to be men of faith, and how to walk humbly before thee. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning live again, where we should talk about natural health. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.